I am Black business. From the moment I wake until the time I sleep, I am Black business. I am Black business. Are you Black business? I am Black business. Do you support Black businesses? I support Black business because I am Black business. Black Business Expo, one of the largest business showcases in the history of Black America in North Carolina. Sign up today at www.blackbusinessexpousa.com or call 919-380-9090. I am Black business. I am Black business. From the moment I wake until the time I sleep, I am Black business. I am Black business. Are you Black business? I am Black business. Do you support Black businesses? I support Black business because I am Black business. Black Business Expo, one of the largest business showcases in the history of Black America in North Carolina. Sign up today at www.blackbusinessexpousa.com or call 919-380-9090. I am Black business. I am Black business. From the moment I wake until the time I sleep, I am Black business. I am Black business. Are you Black business? I am Black business. Do you support Black business? Black business because I am Black business. Black Business Expo, one of the largest business showcases in the history of Black America in North Carolina. Sign up today at www.blackbusinessexpousa.com or call 919-380-9090. I am Black business. I am Black business. From the moment I wake until the time I sleep, I am Black business. I am Black business. Are you Black business? I am Black business. Do you support Black businesses? I support Black business because I am Black business. Black Business Expo, one of the largest business showcases in the history of Black America in North Carolina. Sign up today.
The Black Business Expo is changing my life. This year, they are giving away laptops and even $5,000 in cash to students just like me. I'm Alexis, and I want to go to college to fulfill my dream of becoming an entrepreneur. Help the Black Business Expo going to www.blackbusinessexpousa.com and also becoming a vendor, a sponsor, or donating.
Good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning. It's Sunday and it's a great day in a beautiful city. You know, the Black Business Expo is a network. The Black Business Expo is not a network. The Black Business Expo is a organization that raises scholarships for kids. What we do each and every year is we give out 10 scholarships to kids in the fields of marketing, business, advertising, science, computers, and then we give out 5 scholarships to kids in entrepreneurship. This year, the Black Business Expo, it's going to put a stipulation on the scholarships that we give out, and we give them out to students who are moving from high school to college. And sometimes if there's an exceptional kid who really needs help, we give out a scholarship to a kid in middle school. We're looking at the best and the brightest, and we're impacting their lives, and we're impacting their family lives. And so the stipulation that we're going to put on all of our scholarships is that once you get a laptop and up to $5,000, we want you to take a portion of that money and utilize that laptop to start your own business. With so many changes in the world today, with over $1 trillion in our community, we should be able to create something as young people, as business owners. As I continue to talk about the phone, in my day, I didn't have a phone. In my day, I didn't have the internet. In my day, I didn't have the resources and tools. But today we have the resources and we have the tools as young people. And if you're anywhere from 5 to 9, you can create your own business. You can create your own business. You don't have any gatekeepers to stop you from going where you want to go. And our idea around this is to have our young people all over the world to begin to really connect. That's why we created the Black Business Network. And for those who don't know, the Black Business Network is a 24-hour network that allows us to talk like we want to talk, to say what we want to say, to be who we want to be as thought leaders, as business owners, and of course, as corporations. This morning, we have a guest. As I talked all week, we broke this network down to 7 days. The first day was business to business, where we had speakers who came in and they talked about business. They talked about different aspects of your business. And for those of you who've been here all week, it's been a ride. This morning I wanted to kind of talk a little bit about some of our speakers. We had on Monday was business empowerment. On Tuesday was branding and advertising and marketing and merchandising. On Wednesday was social media. On Thursday was diversity and inclusion. On Friday was Generation X versus Generation Z. And then on Saturday was a great day, which was business and the culture. And then on Sunday, it's Black business and the church. And so each one of these days were days that we had an opportunity to talk about things that not only affected the Black community and the Black culture, but we talked about things that helped to inspire. And we had people from North Carolina, South Carolina. We had people from Las Vegas, Nevada. We had people from Singapore. We had people from London, England. We had people from all across the country. And one of the missions for this broadcast is to have somebody from countries all over the world. We have 100 speakers, and those 100 speakers really did an outstanding job. And one of the reasons we had a lot of speakers and a lot of different voices was so that you can feel different voices, because I believe that everybody has something to say. I'm your host this morning, Eric Kelly III, and it's given me a privilege and pride just to showcase these speakers, just to bring these speakers into your homes, just to bring these speakers' voices into your voice. I talked about there are 5 entities to being successful. The first one is to think. And I think a lot of people miss that whole thinking part. And so after you think, then come up with a dream. Then after you come up with a dream, then do the research. Get trained if you don't have that information. And after you get trained, you want to begin to prepare and plan. And once you plan, then you got to execute. And if you can't execute and you don't execute, then things just don't happen. And so with that being said, this morning is the state of Black business in the church. And our guest this morning is none other than a friend of mine, gentleman I've known, ever since high school. And this is the kinds of relationships that we all need to continue to build. None other than the bishop, the good, Daryl Anderson. Good morning, Reverend Dr. Bishop. Daryl Anderson, how's it going?
Good morning. Excuse me. Good morning. Good morning, Dr. Eric Kelly III.
We've come a long way, man. We've come a long way.
We have, man. It's an honor being here, and I'm so excited about what you're been doing, and basically just being there with you all your life, most of the
life. Oh, so yeah. And people don't know we're truly cousins. They don't know. Yeah. We don't disclose all the information. But with no further ado, I'd like to introduce to some and reintroduce to others a gentleman who's a pioneer in himself, a young man who I'm very proud to be a friend of, because I've watched your career and watched the great things that you're doing, not just here in America, but all over the country, all over the world. And, a lot of times people don't say to folk that are their friends that not only that they are proud to be their friend, but they appreciate that I can give you a call and you will show up. Showing up is more than, just being somebody's friend. And with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, the Bishop, Daryl Anderson, who's going to talk about Black business and the church. And I'll see you on the other side.
Thank you, man. Thank you. Good morning to everyone. I am so honored, and it's a privilege, first of all, to be called on this platform and to have what I would say a major part or a minor part of this Black Expo. I am also excited about what my friend, my brother in the Lord also is doing in the work with the Black Expo out of North Carolina. I'm here in Atlanta now. Been here for some good, over close to 20 years or more. But my home is still Durham, North Carolina. My high school is still the Great Hillside High School in Durham, North Carolina. I am a Hornet, and I am proud to come out of that class with Dr. Kelly. Do want to put a say, please support this this endeavor that Dr. Kelly have as far as raising the money for the laptops, being able to sow into this Black Expo, that we can help young people do what they are doing, because I believe if something of this platform was available when Kelly came up with myself, and I might call him Kelly or myself Daryl, but that's because of our friendship, our relationship, not disrespecting what he's doing. But if something was here like that when we started, I believe we would have got off the ground a bit earlier than we did. So please, go into this Black Expo USA and so generously, if it's nothing but $10, $5 or $20, or those of you who have made it in your business and you want to reach back and grab one of these young kids to help them get started and to show that you can make it out of wherever you're coming from. Because I know Kelly, I know myself, we didn't grow up with parents that made six figures. At least mine did. Now I come from a single parent with three kids. She had three kids, and I'll be the elder one. But yet she did an awesome job. She's going to be with the Lord now, but she done an awesome job. Strong Black woman, a woman. And I know Kelly mother and grandmother are very strong. So that's why we're here where we are right now, because of the push that these women in the Black community had. Because at that time, you just didn't have the Black family. You had the whole family. And the church was an intimate part of that movement when we grew up. So I am excited. I'm here to talk about the state of the Black church, and as far as concerned the business part of it. But I entitled this Behind the Veil. And the reason I've done that is because if we understand the Bible or the Word of God, that in the Old Testament, everybody couldn't go behind the veil. It was reserved for just a few people, and you had to be the high priest in order to go behind the veil. But it was behind the veil that the business of what was going on with God was there. The people on the front side of the veil was there for worship. They were there for praise. But the behind the veil is where the high priest went. And if the high priest was not ready, I'm using layman's term, but if the high priest didn't have his or her back that day his act together, then he would not make that transition for the people. He was there to offer up the sins for the people of Israel. He was there also to post the blood and all that behind the veil. The people on the front side of the veil did not know what was going on behind the veil. They didn't see that. And it was at that time, that's the way it was. That's the way that God wanted it. And now that I've been in this long enough, I'm going to get to this. It's good that they couldn't see when I first got into ministry, because I didn't grow up in the church. I didn't grow up understanding or going to the Bible. In fact, if the truth be known, my grandmother was very Christian. She grew up in the Methodist church, and she lived two doors down from the church, away from the church. But the only thing that we did, she would make us get up. If I stayed at her house, she would make us get up on Sunday morning, but we didn't have to go to church. She didn't make us go to church as kids, and my mother didn't go to church. So when I got into the church or got saved now, I literally had to get to a place where I wanted God in my life. I asked, if there is a God, God, show me who you are. I was out there like most people. Well, I'm not going to say most people, but a lot of people might have been doing. I was out there in the streets having a great time, doing what I thought was necessary for me to do. But God came into my life. And like the old people used to say, I think my grandma was praying for me. And that's why I'm here today. And it's been some 30 years now that I've been in ministry and doing this work. So I didn't want to know, even before I got into church, I didn't want to know about church. I didn't want to know what was going on behind the veil. I didn't want to know the backside of the church, what the business part of the church was, the meetings and all that went on. I didn't want to know how the money was being used. I didn't care. That wasn't really part of my life. I wanted to, if when I did get into church and when I say the church, I'm talking about the church building. I'm not talking about church for those of us who know. We're not talking about the persona of us being the church. For Paul says that we are now that church. We are that body. We are the body of Christ. But I'm talking about the church building. Now, please let me go. So you must understand that we have what we now have, the church, who we are. Those of us who are born again, those of us who have received Jesus Christ, and I'm talking to Christian now. So I'm not, if you are any of us, that's fine. I do not, but they asked me to do a specific work here. So this is what I'm coming on to do. I'm talking about those of us who have received Jesus Christ as our Lord and Savior. We are the church. We are that church. But when we go out on Sunday, we went to a church building. And that church building is where the saints gathered together. We had there now what we call the pastor, the bishop, the overseer, whatever denomination you was affiliated with, that was the church. And that person operated as, depending on the denomination, they operated as either I know this is going to be kind of because people don't like to hear business and the church, but they acted as the CEO of that church or as that business. And I know that's a word we don't want to say in the church because people don't want to associate the church and the business part of the church, because the church, like I believe at that time, church shouldn't be a business. Church should be a worship place. Church should be a place where I come and meet God and I associate with God and I fellowship with the saints and all that. But if you go behind the veil, there's some criteria that must be met each and every day if you're running the church. And that's why my friend Kelly brought me on to understand that. Now, please, let's go. Like I said, I'm old enough now where I've been in this ministry for some time now. And so we must, if you understand that when that business part, and I keep hesitating about saying business because I don't want to hurt nobody, but I must, this is my assignment this morning. So the business part of the church is not for everybody. Everybody can't take the business side of the church or understand the business side of the church, that bills do have to be paid, that people do have to be fed, that lights have to be kept on for you to come in on Sunday morning or Wednesday night or Tuesday night, whenever your church building deemed fit for you to come. That microphones and even now that we're in this stage where the building have been closed, many of the buildings have been closed, but yet a lot of pastors now have to deal with this social network, or having a platform to move this ministry, the word of God, forth. So now this takes money. It doesn't just come because somebody say, please, Jesus, let's pray. It didn't do that in your business outside of the church building. When you started your business, and Dr. Kelly has been on all week, talking about different aspects of business when it comes to the Black church. I mean, the Black people in general. But when you talk about your business is still set up in networking and social media and showing back into the young people that they can get a good foundation, a good start off of what they're doing. So in all that, I hope I'm bringing this. I want to lay some foundation here before I move on a little further. So when we, again, behind the veil and in front of the veil. Front of the veil, praise, worship. Let's look at the Old Testament in a minute. And we're not going to go through because I don't have the time. How the tabernacle was erected and all that. But we do know that was a part of praise, that anybody could praise God. Now, when you get inside the gates of the tabernacle, then the Jews at that time, or the Israelites, would be there. That was the part that only they was able to go through. And they would come throughout the time, and you would have the priest there who would take their offering and slice it and dice it. And I'm trying to keep it nice here. And the blood will continually flow from this animal. The priest there would now be there all day, and he would sit there and just cut up this animal that you brought, whether it was a sheep or goat or whatever that you bought. And once a year, the high priest would now go behind the veil, and he would offer this up to God. If the high priest, again, I said, was not fit, was not ready, had not been with God, the Bible, the Word of God says that a chain or a rope would be around his leg, and at the bottom of his garment would be bells. As long as the people heard the bells ringing, then they knew that God was accepting their sacrifice. If the bells stopped ringing, they mean that most of the time that the priest had died, God did not accept the sacrifice, and they would pull him out from behind that veil. When Jesus came and he died on the cross, if those of you remember, the veil was torn from the top to the bottom, and the veil was let open for everyone to come in. So now we see what went on behind the veil. We see, here's the word that you might not want to hear. We see the business of the church. We see that, and we still have those who was not the pastors, even in today's time, who messed up, was not right with God. But that day, back in that day, or in the Bible, in the Old Testament, they would die and they would leave. In today's time, because of the grace of God, these men and women of God can still move on. They still can go. That don't mean that we get away. And I'm putting myself in that too, because this is my ministry, my business too. That don't mean we get away. What that means is that we can repent, we can get ourselves together, just like anybody else. We have that right to come to God, but yet we still must understand that this is still very important, that we must have ourselves together. And not only should we have ourselves together, but everyone who now can go behind the veil, who can see behind the veil, must also have themselves together. Now, how is this relating to the Black church? Everything that we done from my age now, it started in the Black church, from the NAACP to the SCLC, to everything that been a move to get Black people into Black businesses have been started and moved into from the church. Most of the singers out there, in my time, we didn't have rapping. So I'm telling my age a little bit, rap came on along a little longer. But if you had a Aretha Franklin, if you had someone of that caliber, they started a Marvin Gaye, or I'm kind of aged, putting some date on myself, but they started in the Black church. And that church was the platform that they first got their mind or their business sense of how to handle. Now, watch this. Now we incorporate the foundation of the church and the foundation of business together, because the integrity that one got for handling their business was from the church of the word of God. So when they did go out into what we quote the world, and do, whether they continue as a gospel person, singer, or a gospel motivational, even if you're doing motivational speaking, you might not call yourself a preacher, but you're still using the principles of the word of God when you're motivating people, even when you're doing your businesses out there. When Kelly asked me to do this, he could have went a whole week and just had different platforms when it comes to Black business. But on Sunday morning, early Sunday morning, like Christ did early Sunday morning, when he asked, are we going to kick this off with the Black church and the business of the Black church? So everything that we do as Black people, whether you grew up in church or didn't grow up in church like me, you still had that foundation of how to run a business. You might not have the business sense that some of these young people have now. That we might not have the laptops, we might not have the social media platform, but when we got our first job, even at McDonald's or I did Dunkin' Donuts, you had that integrity, and you look at the business part of it. How are they running this? How is this happening? And many of us, we're in the places we are now because we got inspired. We got inspired to do this. We got inspired that we could go in and see somebody else doing this business and say one day. And that was the dream that I believe that Dr. Kelly was talking about, starting this thing off with a dream or a thought. The word of God said with a vision. Without a vision, the people what? Perish. So he told in the book of Habakkuk, he said for Habakkuk, Habakkuk said, I'll go to the high place and watch and see what God has for me to do. And God, and the word says, write the vision and what? Make it plain. That's business. Write the vision. If there's no vision, if there's not, people going to perish. If you don't have a mindset to write this vision and make it plain that those who read it can run. The reason that many of us are right here now on this platform today is because Dr. Kelly had this vision, whether it was from his mother, grandmother, and the lineage of that. And he said, okay, I'm going to place this vision. I'm going to run with this vision. And somebody, he's now imparting it to people to help him run this vision and all that. And as God even one day may call him home, I'm home or you home. That vision will not die, because if you impart that vision, watch this, which is now part of our business, because the vision must have feet, arm, leg, and all that for it to come to fruition. So if the vision is out there and you're making it plain, and sometimes making it plain, you're now becoming, here, watch this now, you're now becoming, I'm going to use a word here that I don't want to mess you up, you're becoming the pastor of the preacher over your vision, over your ministry. If you travel across the world, many of you who have traveled, you go to places, and this really blew me out, because when I went and started traveling to places, God had afforded me an opportunity to be in Africa, be in London. I'm in London. I have become now I am the ambassador to a church in London, Shallow Worship Center. But when I travel there and I see the word service, service on buildings or ministry, and I say, that's a ministry, that's a business. That word ministry up there, and the word ministry only means to serve. So when you look at that thing, and they have on there the ministry of this or the ministry of that, I would tell them, okay, I thought that's not a church. They said, no, that's where people go to get health care. This is where people go to get this done, or this is where people go to get that done. And I said, well, they have the word ministry up there. And they said, well, Bishop, that's only to serve. That's only a service. The word there means to serve. So when you're doing your ministry, in your business, you're serving. So watch this. Your main reasoning for doing what you're doing in your business, here, what makes us different or make you different from everybody else. This is when you employ the word of God into God, you asking God to come into your business, is when your motive is not just to make money, because most business don't make money the first years. The most churches don't make money the first year. I know you gave that $1 or you gave that $5 and you saw 100 people there and you thought that this church is just moving and just growing, but that money have to be taken and used to keep the church in operation. Now, if you're coming from, let me do this, let me take this. Watch this. If you're coming from a different denomination, then you have the backing of that denomination to help you in that service, in that ministry. Watch this. Behind the veil, you have the ability. But if you're starting, and which many of people have, because again, I came through that, what I like to say, dispensations, or I like to say waves of the church, where you go that some, when the church now, many folks began, when I started pastoring, many folks began to say, I don't want to be a Baptist no more. I don't want to be Methodist no more. I just want to be, come to a church where there's no denomination affiliated and all that. So people popped up and started churches with non-denomination and all that, and which is great. Nothing wrong with that. In fact, I have been over and have started ministries, and most of the time, sometimes it wasn't a denomination backing in these ministries. But here's my but. There's always a BUT there to take you over the bridge. Just because you start a business, or in the church start a business, or start a church with no denomination or non-denominational, that don't mean the money or the business runs non-denominational. You have to have funds. You have to have a business mindset in order to keep that ministry going. Now, I already defined the ministry. The word ministry means service. In order to keep that service going. Aaron, in the Bible day, that was a service. They had Moses, he served the people. Joshua, he served the people. He was a leader. Joshua, when they crossed over Jordan, Joshua said, pick out your land. Pick out your real estate that you want. And there I want you to not just pick out your real estate and put your footprints on your real estate, but I want you to build that real estate. I want you to do something with it. I don't want you to just come and worship God in the tabernacle, then you go and you don't have nothing to show for it. I want you to do something with it. I don't want you to just come to church on Sunday morning and come and do this on Wednesday night and learn all of this, and then you don't go out and do anything. It should be that your mindset is to propel you into another dimension of God, that what God has set forth for you, that now if you get in the business side of it, watch this, not just the word of God, we need that, but you're doing what Dr. Kelly and so many of these speakers that came on this week and showed you, you're now taking this plan, you're implementing this plan to yourself to help fit the needs of who you are. It's like dressing yourself. It is that, yes, all of us might have on shirt, ties, or coats, or whatever, women dresses and all that, but everyone don't like the same color. Everybody don't wear the same size. Everybody doesn't put on the same amount of clothes every day like someone else. But whatever fit or tailor to your business, when it comes there, then you go into the building when it open back up and you say, God, speak to me that I can take this and I can go to where I need to go to and help the Black community, help the Black ministries, help the Black people. And watch this. Here it is. Here it is. Here it is. Watch this. Watch this. Watch this. Please, you got to understand that, because where there is a Black business but no integrity, and no, we're just running a business. We're running a business. Growing up, I live on, my grandmother lived 2 doors from the church. I live across the street. As a young boy, was a store there, and it's not there, but it's called Smith Store. Those of you who grew up in Durham, North Carolina, on Austin Avenue, who was across the street, I can literally, this before they made 4 lanes, and you literally can walk across the street, because then too many cars come at any time. So at 9, 10, my grandmother used to say, go across the street, get me a soda, get me this or get that. And she would say to me, tell Smith that I'll pay him next week, or tell Smith I'll do this next week. Now I know we can't operate like we do now, because then you got so many stores now, like your local grocery chains out there that really suffocating a business like that. But back then, you could go back there and I go there. I say, Mr. Smith, my grandma sent me over here. She want a Coke and she want a bag of chips or whatever she wants. She want a dozen eggs, and she told me she'll come across here. She'll come this end of the week and give you this or whatever. Make it right with you. And he said, okay, here, boy. You know, back then, you're a little black boy in the black community. Everybody call you boy. Hey, here, boy, take this over here to your mama, grandma, and do this. Now, at that time, I didn't understand, because all I did was go carry out what she wanted me to do. But when it was more involved than what I did, I was just the runner. I was just the one running across the street. But they had built integrity, honesty, faith. All that had been part of this move of what just went on. I didn't know that. All I was just a 9-year-old, 10-year-old, 12-year-old boy running across the street doing what my grandma asked me to do. He had a business and she needed service. And what happened was, even though she didn't have the funds at the time, her word and his word was so entwined in each other, and they knew each other. Now, I know, like I said, it's not like that now, but what I'm trying to show you, prove is that black business was still there then. And that black business was there to serve that community at the time. And even though my grandmother might not have the little 10, 15, 20 cents at the time, she went across, he knew that she was going to make it right. So what we have now is still in the black church. The words I just used, faith, integrity, honesty, those things still make a difference when you're out there trying to build your business, trying to write your visions. Those things are very important even in today. So where do I find those things? I find it in the black church. Now, again, we're talking about in front of the veil and again behind the veil. What's behind the veil? Let me show you. Paul makes it simple when he talk about the Holy Spirit. He talk about faith. He talking about being honest. He talk about long suffering. If you're going to do your business, if you're going to be a pastor, if you're going to be a minister, if you starting your church, if you're starting your online ministry now, and you hear me do this, those things are still very important. You can't ask people to support your ministry or support your church if you're not honest. If you don't have the right means in place to do what you got to do, even God is not going to support it. So you have to continue. And if you're taking all the funds, if you're taking everything and just hoarding it like some of those in the word of God did, then even God's going to come and take care of that. You still have to have the right people in the right place, and you surround yourself with people of integrity. You surround your people, your life with people who are going to do the right thing by you, not just yes people, but people who can say to you, no, that's not right. That's not what we want to do. Now, let me say this, because also we must understand that I came up and still come up with the church and state was seen to be separate. So even my first year as a pastor, I'm going to keep the church and the state separate. What the church did one thing, what the state did another thing. I know the whole entire tale of that. That's what I understand, but it's almost impossible. Let me tell you why. Because your people or your folks you serve are being sometimes state driven. They're coming into your ministry coming into the church with their own mindset of how things should be ran. They're coming in into the ministry of how things should do. Case in point, let me give you a good thing. In Paul day, in the church day, there were three folds. Watch this. I told you in the Old Testament, you had the praise, you had the worship, and then you had that behind the veil. When Jesus died, the veil was rented. And people now, Paul says in the book of Hebrew, we all now can come boldly to the throne of God. So we now, and even Peter says, we're now part of that high priest, or we're part of the priesthood in our own home. So why would God take the business out of your house if he now saying you're a priest, you're the overseer, you're the CEO of your home? If you can't, he says to the bishop in Timothy, if you can't run your own home right, then you can't run the church. And he says to you and I, even if we're not bishops, if you can't take care of your home as a business, understanding that money just can't come and go and you not know where it's going, then it's going to be hard for you to prosper. Everybody want to hear that? Prosper in God. Your church, your ministry, your service, your church, or whatever, going to have to prosper. So please, we see that. Now, Paul says in Paul Day, as I started off and said, that Paul had three parts. The churches had three parts. The one part was to steal the praise. Everybody can praise. That's why you don't have to be saved to praise. I grew up in the streets. If you came up and somebody didn't shoot at you or somebody didn't do something right and you make it home at night, every time we made it home, somebody say, thank you, Lord. Whoa, Jesus, thank you. Didn't even go to church, didn't know God like that, but still said, what? Thank you. Thank you. Your mama taught you to say thank you. Then you had the worship part. The worship part was where worship literally means that I'm in love with God. That's where I'm at now in my life. I'm in love with God. This is what I do. I don't do just for money. I need money. Don't get me wrong. I need to understand how to work this thing. That's why James says that I must have wisdom in doing what I'm doing. But the Bible's word, Jesus also said, don't do this just for money. Don't let money be your motivation. Why? Because a lot of times nobody's going to pay you, but you still have to honor and do what you have to do. So the worship part is being in love with God. The word worship literally means in itself. That to make love is into me, you see. God said, I want you into me. I want you so wrapped up in me in your business. I want you so wrapped up in me that when I tell you, like I said to the rich young ruler, will you give up everything? And you say, well, Lord, I don't know. I don't establish this business. I got this business off the ground, Lord, and I don't know. And God said, what I need you to do, will you do this for me? And you say, and the scripture said that the rich man said, well, Lord, I ain't about to give up my money. I'm getting ready to leave out of here. And Jesus, and the scripture says that that Jesus walked away. Peter asked Jesus at the same time when he heard this, because Jesus says it's easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than a rich man to enter into heaven. So we went through the church age where people wanted to suffer for the Lord. And they believe if I'm poor, if I don't have nothing, I can suffer for the Lord. Well, God didn't tell you to suffer for the Lord. For the scripture never told you that you have to suffer like that for the Lord. But Jesus was literally saying to them that in order for a camel to go through the eye of a needle, the city was fortified. And for the camel had to go through a little, what they call a gate part of the thing, the city to get into the gate to keep the enemies out. So what he had to do was unload. They had to unload the camel, the back, all the package, everything that the camel had on him. They had to unload it for the camel to get through what they would call the eye of the needle. What Jesus was trying to say in our business mind is that sometimes you have to unload yourself. Sometimes you have to unburden yourself. Sometimes you have to unstress yourself in order to continue to move. You just can't sit there and be so business minded that you're not family minded, that you're not social minded, that you don't have empathy on people. So a lot of times we have to unburden ourselves and detox ourselves, that we be able, and in this day and time with this pandemic out here, with this government doing the way it's doing, with so much going on, and the Black community is at a need that they need so much. They need more now than I believe that was in my mama day. Because my mother in them days, man, I didn't never heard them complaining like some of us we complain today. They would feed the preacher and still have enough. We might not got the breast of the chicken when the preacher came over, but we got the drumstick. Come on, y'all. But Anyway, let me move on. So what that was in love. If you're going to keep this with the thing that we have today, the church, and being part of the church and still be in your business and have the business part of the church, you got to understand you got to be in love. But the most important part of that part of that worship part was the fellowship, of what we call communion. The word communion means to communicate, that we had to communicate with God. Everybody didn't communicate. Everybody didn't take communion. If you look over in the book of Corinthians, it says that for some of it, for this reason, many of you are sick unto death, because you are taking the Lord's Supper unworthily. And what we were literally saying here, that what Paul would do in his day, it says that if you're ready to go, if you don't think that you have all against your brother, your sister, and all this, that you need to go get it right and come back and take the Lord's Supper. Well, in the Baptist church, we took the Lord's Supper on the first day of the week, every Sunday, first Sunday of the month. We took the Lord's Supper. In the Methodist church, it could have been different, but the style, in the black church of the Methodist, the Black Baptist church, they would pass it around. Some would go up, the usher would come and all that and pass around. Methodist church, you would go and you would get on your knees in front of the altar. Pentecostal church, you could pass around, you could do different things. So, but in Paul's day, that was meant that these were the people that was in fellowship with each other. These were the people, we are doing this in remembrance of God. Now, let me tell you what happened because understanding when you try to separate church and the business. And believe me, for those of you who are hear me and might hear me, the church should not run just as a business. So that's why I said again, let me keep repeating myself, behind the veil, because in front of the veil, we don't want to see the business part of it. We don't want to understand the business part should never leak out into the front of the church. Some folks don't come to your church want to know what the phone bill is, or how many members are on the roll, and how many people, how the choir or the usher board is not operating, or how they're going to operate, how many times, what the colors of the usher board dresses are, the shoes of the deacon board, and all that. Some people don't want to know that. That's behind the veil. They don't want to know that. All they want to do is come for what? The praise and worship. And you must understand, as the CEO, the pastor, the bishop, the leader, the overseer of the church, you must recognize that. And if you don't recognize that, you're going to mess up your ministry. You're going to, just like anybody else. When I go to the IHOP, or I'm just keeping it simple, but go to even a nice restaurant that you have to pay some money to, I don't want the chef or the manager of the restaurant come out there and say, look, y'all have to pay these tips because we are running short today. You don't want to hear that. No, I don't want to hear that. That's your business. That's your business. You need to take care of that Monday through Friday, whenever you got to do in your business meeting, and whenever you do that. I don't want to hear. I don't want to hear somebody come out and say, look, guess what? Our social media just fell. Our network just went down. We didn't pay our Wi-Fi this week. So everybody who trying to log on, you can't log on. You go to that coffee place. I'm not a coffee drinker, but Starbucks, and they tell you the social network have went down, and you can't do anything. We can't even serve you your favorite coffee. You like, oh no, this ain't what I came here for. I came here for what? Service. That's what the church must understand. But in front of even though the veil has been rented, in front of the veil, they come here for service. They didn't come here to hear how Miss Jones and Brother Smith is committing adultery, and they both in leadership. No, the CEO, the pastor, or whoever have to get rid. They have to do something. They have to, whatever the church bylaws say, that's what take place. Now, I just brought up another thing because I said that when I started, because of the non-denominational of the people was, now this is the wave that was going through the church 20 years ago, that people didn't want to be like the Baptists, the Methodists, and all that. Well, they come into the church, and what? We want communion every first Sunday. Oh, wait a minute. You left the church but you want to come to church and establish how the business or what goes behind the veil in order to do. And if you're not happy with it, then you want to go back or you want to get mad. But you left that church because you didn't like what was going on. Are you following me here? Understanding that many people, that's how they handle business. I left this because I want that, but I left that because I want this, and I'm going to bring that over into this and try to shape your business and your vision the way that I want it done. No, you're only supposed to walk with the vision. You're supposed to run with the vision. You're not the visionary. You only supposed to do that. And my time is up. I see my brother coming back on. And but anyway, I thank God for you, and I enjoyed my time. God bless you. If there's any questions, I don't know if you got time for questions or anything, but you can do that if Dr. Kelly says okay. I can't hear you.
Of course, a great presentation. I like the way that you carried it on and set it up so that people would understand that Black business and the church and all of those things are very important. And from time to time, people don't think about the church part. And it's very important. Dara, I want to thank you for being on the show. We had some questions. We had some questions. And, you know, it's unfair. That's unfair. For those out there that don't know, I want to publicly say, as I always do each and every time that you come on our platform, thank you so very much, man.
No
it's always good. You know, we can laugh and joke, but at the end of the day, we're people.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of the day, we look at how we can be successful. And one of the things I say to people all the time, if you are a success, you will always be a success. And you have been a success, you know, and I didn't want to read your bio because it begins to go to Rome, Italy, all over the world. And then sometimes the words that are on our bios disguise the greatness, the real greatness, because you're thinking about all the things people have done. But I want people to look at the man, you know, look at the person who is actually giving the speech. And again, I want to thank you. And is there anything that you like to say to inspire people this morning?
Yeah, well, two things. First of all, Kelly, Dr. Kelly, I wanted to say, put my book out there. It's No Regrets, Living the Saving Single Life. I came out of I was divorced. I'm a divorced bishop. And for over 10 years now, I had been single, and I mean had been because I now engaged, but yet I wrote this in that time I was going through with the church and business, and how the church was shunning me because of my being divorced. And what I had to go through, and I met a lot of folks because who out there. And a lot of pastors were staying in marriages and just to keep the business looking good. And I said no. My integrity wouldn't let me do that. I had to keep moving and keep pushing. So it's called it's Darryl B. Anderson. It's on Amazon. No Regrets. Living the Saving Single Life. And I want to say to each and every one out there, thank you, especially to my friend, my cousin, my brother, and all that. Thank you for the opportunity. I think we might supposed to be back on again this evening, and if that happens at 1 p.m., we'll be able to do that. But God bless y'all, man, and thank you for the opportunity.
Well, I think sometimes people don't talk about it, and I had one of my guests, and she's one of my hosts today, and she talked about, you know, growing apart and how her and her husband was going to counseling, and they were spending a lot of money for these counseling sessions. And then she said she went to her last counseling session, and after a conversation with the counselor, he said, "You guys just have grown apart." And I think that's one of the things that people in marriages don't think about. You know,
right?
Do you grow apart? You know, you go in as one couple, and then things over time, it's called life, and you grow apart. And your integrity and given this story that a lot of people should read, really shine some light on what you really need to think about, because in the end, there are two people here.
Right.
You know, there's a man, there's a woman, and both people go into a situation for fulfillment and for being a team. And you know, when the team is not working well together, that's a miserable feeling for everybody. And as you said, many ministers stay in because of what it looks like. But then, are you staying in for what it looks like, or are you just staying in it just to be in it? And I think your book is a great book. It's a must read for not only single people, but for people in general.
Yeah.
Because, you know, a lot of times a message that's in a book could start out one way, but give a shine light on other things. Because if you're in a relationship with somebody and you stand in that relationship because of family and friends and because of what it looks like, it's just as bad. Right. And Daryl, you said you can get that book on Amazon.
Yeah.
Can people email you to get a copy of that book? Do you have an email for people?
Yeah. My email is Pastor Like a Church, Pastor D Anderson, Pastor D as in Daryl Anderson at yahoo.com. And you can email me, and we'll get this out to you. And thank you. I'm also on Facebook at Bishop Daryl B. Anderson on Facebook. So you can DM me all that there too.
Well, my last question is, Daryl, do you do any counseling? Do you talk to other individuals who want to learn more about being single and saved and single? Do you have any time to minister to other people? And I'm pretty sure that you have a congregation, I guess, in a church. And when does that church air online for people to continue the relationship with you?
First of all, great question. Thank you, Kelly, Dr. Kelly. We are with you. We'll be here at 11 a.m. this morning. In fact, Bishop Daryl B. Anderson Facebook Live. We'll be airing there this morning service. As far as the counseling, I am a counselor. I do counseling now through Zoom. So if you want to inbox me and set up a counseling. I also am a bereavement coordinator for Pruitt Health Hospice. So with this COVID going on, I talk to people every day, family members who have not seen their family, who have now dealing with loved ones who have been lost due to COVID or any terminal illness. In fact, my mother passed in 2017 with dementia, and then my sister passed this year, 2020, with ALS. And I'm here. I had to go personally absorb that grief and understand the 5 stages of grief and how to go through grief, how to, you never overcome, but it is manageable, that you have to press on through those difficult times. So yes, reach out to me if you need to, and if you can't get in touch with me, I'm pretty sure Dr. Kelly, he know how to get in touch with me personally. He's, you only have a few people who can call you at 1 o'clock in the morning, you get up for. So, or who can talk to you any kind of way. He'll be home. So that's how we are. So if you need to get in touch with me, I do have my doctorates. I'm not just saying that, to understand that I'm not just in here for the fun. This is what I do. This is who I am. And this is what God. I also would work with the jail ministry for 20 years. Those who came through the jail system, I work with that counseling too. So I'm here. And just let me know. Thank you for the opportunity, man.
And of course, we're going to be moving on. And like I say, I'll see you on the other side.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Mark, we're going to move on to our next presentation. A young man who is a gentleman who does great things, not only here in the city of Durham, North Carolina, but he does things in terms of helping people. We're going to go to a presentation by Henry McCoy, who's currently a faculty member at North Carolina Central University. You know, Henry McCoy is a Angel Network director. He's the managing director. And of course, he's part of the Triangle Ventures Alliance. And you're going to enjoy Dr. Henry McCoy. You know, he's a former Assistant Secretary of Commerce of the state of North Carolina. And as a part of North Carolina Central University, the university I went to, Eagle Pride this morning, Eagle Pride all the time, Eagle Pride all the time. With no further ado, I'd like to introduce to many of you, Dr. Henry McCoy.
Hello, everybody. Hope you're enjoying the conference. My name is Dr. Henry McCoy. I'm on the faculty of North Carolina Central University School of Business, where I lead the entrepreneurship program. I want to take a moment today to share with you some findings that I have from recent data that's gone out around the PPP program and Black entrepreneurship and COVID-19. So hopefully this will be something that you'll find some information that you can think is useful or at least eye-opening. So name of my topic is Race, Entrepreneurship, and COVID-19, Black Small Business Survival in Pre- and Post-Pandemic America. So the first thing I want to do is just talk a little bit about what you will hear from me today. So I want to start out with a bit of an overview, an introduction, and what's going on with the COVID-19 crisis and how it's impacting Black businesses. I did want to talk a little bit about, well, where were Black businesses before COVID-19? But we can't talk about where we were before COVID-19 without talking about how we actually got here. Then I want to talk about, okay, we talked about where we are, how we got here, but now what do we expect to see once COVID-19 is over? Then I want to talk about, well, what should be done based on all this information for Black businesses based on the COVID-19 impacts. And then I want to kind of wrap it all up with some findings and conclusions. So first off, let's look at the right side of the screen. What do we know about COVID-19? Well, we know that this is the greatest economic downturn since the Great Depression. We know that it's health-induced, which means that until we get the health crisis under control, we won't get the economy back open up. There's over 10.4 million individuals infected in the United States right now with COVID-19, and nearly 245,000 deaths in the United States. And of those infections and of those deaths, racial minorities have been the most negatively impacted by the COVID-19. Looking at health and economics, we know that in terms of who gets the virus, hospitalizations and deaths, African Americans and Latinos are by far the greatest group. In terms of economics, who's losing jobs? These industries that have essentially went dormant, travel, hospitality, tourism, largely those are industries that have Black and minority workers in them. And so racial minorities are seeing a negative impact from COVID-19 that is disproportionate to the rest of the races. Now let's look at the left side of the screen. Now, what do we know from a small business standpoint? So Dr. Rob Fairley from UC Santa Cruz did a study where he looked at the decline of small business from February to April of this year. And what he found was that, perhaps by no surprise, that Blacks had the largest drop of any racial group in terms of small businesses. Now, these are small businesses that essentially provide the primary means of survival for their owners. Whites dropped by 17%, Asians dropped by 26%, and Hispanics dropped by 32%. The greatest group of all was African Americans, which dropped by 41%. And so we saw nearly half of Black businesses wiped out just within the first couple of months of COVID-19. So what was the response to COVID-19? Well, the federal response came through the Small Business Administration. And so something, or what we all know now to be the CARES Act, the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Securities Act. So what was the CARES Act? So let's talk a little bit about where it came from, and then we talk about what it is. So on the left side of the screen, we see the CARES Act, which was passed in March of 2020 in record time. $2.2 trillion essentially was allocated by Congress to prop up the economy from the COVID shutdown. The U.S. Treasury carved out about $660 billion of that for what is known as the Payroll Protection Program. And that came about in April, so about a month after the CARES Act was passed. Within 2 weeks of the Payroll Protection Program being launched, about 1.7 million loans were dispersed for a total of $342 billion. Within another couple of weeks, so by the beginning of May, a month after the Payroll Protection Program, 4.1 million loans have hit the street at almost 526 billion. So within a month's time, within 33 days, the SBA had lent more than 20 times the largest amount they ever had in a previous year of SBA lending. What that means is simply tremendous amounts of dollars hit the street to kind of prop up businesses from a standpoint of coronavirus. Now, what do those dollars look like? So if you look on the right side of the screen, I call it universal PPP, and I'll come back to that term universal momentarily. But the money that went to these businesses, 1% interest rate, it doesn't mature for 2 to 5 years. You can defer payments for 6 months. No fees, no collateral, no personal guarantees, and it's fully forgivable for some reason, particularly if you kept people on the payroll. And so it's unprecedented in terms of the flexibility of what the capital was from the PPP program. So let's first look at who actually got the money. So we know that 75% of the money went to majority white census tracts. If you look at the right side of the screen, what we also know is that President Trump had a number of friends and family who were able to get millions of dollars in small business bailout. So people include his son, one of his sons who owns a lettuce farming venture, Kushner Companies, which of course is his son-in-law, Jared Kushner's companies, and a dentist who golfs with the president. Also, one of his pals, Kanye West, has a Yeezy company, a multi-billion-dollar company, was able to get between $2 and $5 million. And they give these ranges, so we don't know exactly how much Kanye got. Like then Shake Shack and Ruth Chris Steakhouse, which got $10 million and $20 million respectively. And we know that they immediately gave that money back, really from a blowback of the public saying, well, wait a minute, why are these major companies who have plenty of dollars getting that money? Now, if we look back to the left side of the screen, well, I mentioned that, a whole lot of folks got this money. Well, who got the money that perhaps shouldn't have gotten money? So we know that 600 loans went out at about $100 million to ineligible firms. For whatever reason, they shouldn't have been able to get the money at all. Nearly 11,000 firms got about $1 billion, and they already had PPP loans. And based on the statute, if you already had PPP loans, you were not supposed to be able to get additional PPP loans. Another 353 loans for about $195 million went to government contractors who were ineligible because either they had performance issues or they had integrity issues. And so they were not supposed to be able to get access to capital. And then a whopping $3 billion went to what is known as suspicious borrowers. Now, again, this is not coming from what people consider to be left media, left-leaning media, things of that nature. This came straight out of the U.S. House committee, which is made up of a bipartisan group of individuals who essentially said that fraud, waste, and abuse was rampant within the PPP program. So who didn't get it? Well, let's say that falls into a couple of categories. Broadly speaking, sole proprietorships didn't get it. Sole proprietorships are businesses that have one employee. They generally don't have paid employees. And so those individuals, businesses were not able to get much of the PPP loans. But why is that important? Well, that's important because a lot of minority businesses really are primarily comprised of sole proprietorships. So 96% of the Black businesses in the United States are sole proprietorships. 92% of the Latino businesses in the United States are sole proprietorships, whereas only 82% of white businesses are sole proprietorships. What this means is that those businesses had a much harder time getting access to capital for survival. Sole proprietorships, contractors, and gig economy workers actually had to wait a week before they could apply for PPP loans the government basically said, okay, we're going to open up the spigot for big companies first before we let the smaller ones come to get access to capital. Next, it required a tremendous amount of documentation. So in order to get access to PPP loans, these small businesses or these small firms had to produce a whole lot of payroll documentation, which was not as easy as for a big firm who has accountants and CPAs and CFOs and lawyers and things of that nature. So that kept a lot of these companies from getting access to capital. Next, for C and S corporations, which is a perfectly eligible way of setting up a sole proprietorship or a small business, a lot of times owners, instead of taking a regular salary, which the company may not be able to afford that, they will take out what we call dividends on on some kind of routine basis or as needed. Well, anybody who has C and S corporations that took out dividends, which again are legal and highly common, they weren't eligible for access to capital, of course, that were largely minority businesses or African American businesses. In addition to that, these PPP loans that went to the smaller firms are not forgivable. So let me repeat that. So the large amounts of funds, millions of dollars going to larger firms are forgivable. These smaller loans to these smaller individual sole proprietorships are not forgivable. So as you can imagine, this has had a disproportionate negative impact on Black entrepreneurs. So if we look over to the right side of the screen, this gets dives into a little bit more. So not only do we know that sole proprietorships did not get access to capital, and most Black businesses are sole proprietorship, but then when we look at Black businesses in general, we know that they didn't get access to capital either. And so the National Community Reinvestment Coalition did something called match pair testing in July of 2020. Match pair testing is just a fancy scientific way of saying that we took various groups of individuals of different demographics and we sent them out in kind of the same landscape to see if they would experience the same things as the other groups. And so so NCRC sent out whites and Black business owners to businesses to see if they could qualify or get access to PPP loans. And this is what we found, or what the NCRC found from their data, that even when Blacks had better financial profiles, which means they were economically better on paper, the Black business owners were treated worse than their white counterparts. They were offered fewer and different loan products, and not a single Black female business owner was encouraged to apply for a PPP loan. I want to repeat that, not a single Black female business owner was encouraged to apply for a PPP loan. Part of the reason why that's significant is that, from a gender standpoint, but also Black women happen to be the fastest growing entrepreneurship group in the United States. Yet, not one of these banks offered them or encouraged them to apply for a PPP loan. So, what does that mean about the distribution of the PPP dollars? I want to go back to this term universal. And in this case, universal really means unequitable distribution of these dollars. So in the first round of PPP that went out, again, I mentioned to you that sole proprietorships couldn't get that money first. They had to wait a week. And so the big businesses like Steak Shack and Ruth Chris, who actually ended up turning their money back in from the backlash of the public, they got their money first. And so much of the money got gone really before small businesses, and particularly Black and brown small businesses, could get access to it. So by the time the second round came out of PPP dollars, there was a whole big push to get Congress to allocate some of those funding specifically for Black businesses. Well, Congress said, well, no, we're not going to identify this capital just for Black businesses, but we will create a category for underrepresented businesses. That's veterans, that's rural, that's minority-owned, women-owned, economically and socially disadvantaged businesses less than 2 years old. We're creating a pool of resources, or we're not creating a pool of resources. We're asking the Small Business Administration to really put a priority on those businesses getting access to capital. That was in April 2020. Well, when the SBA Inspector General, which is essentially the internal police of the SBA, a month later came back, they looked and they said, well, wait a minute, the SBA did not comply with this inclusive directive and did not enforce it with the bank. So in other words, even though Congress said, well, look, you need to make this a priority where minority and small businesses and disadvantaged businesses get access to this PPP, the SBA didn't comply with it and banks did not comply with it. And so as a function of that, there was another survey that was done after the second round of PPP that was supposed to be more inclusive that the Global Strategy Group did in May of 2023. May 13th, 2020. Of that group of surveys, 41% of those individuals were outright rejected, not getting along. Another 21% of these Black businesses were waiting to hear. So for nearly 2/3 of Black businesses really got no resource at all. Only 12% actually received loans. And so this again was after the directive to be more inclusive. And we know that this led to a lot of unequitable distribution. So what does it look like? So anyway, what this chart does, this table 1, I'm not going to read every line on here, but I do want to give you kind of a high point of what this chart actually means. So early in the process, the administration did not want to actually share the data or kind of from a racial breakdown. Didn't want to share who got the money or their demographics, things of that nature. But a number of news channels and sources actually sued the Trump administration in court to get access to the Freedom of Information Act to this data, and they won. And so they were able to get access to this data in terms of who got capital, or at least the demographics of who got capital. So I mentioned there were about 4.1 million businesses that got these loans. However, the data that was released was for loans only above 150,000. That data was released in July. And of those loans that went out, only 661,000 loans that went out were over 150,000 in total number. So that's the data that I'm showing you right this moment. Now, of that 661,000 loans that went out, less than 95,000 of those actually identified what their racial demographic was. So about 14%. So 94,500 said, okay, I'm Black, I'm white, I'm Asian, or whatever. And so what you essentially see here is kind of an extrapolation of those 94,000 applicants who actually did the data around the demographic for 14%. I've taken that and coupled it with the 661,000 that we know actually got loans of over 150,000, and I've come up with kind of a data of what that demography actually looks like in terms of the racial analysis. And so, of the 661,000 loans that went out, what we expect based on the numbers that I did analysis on is that whites got essentially about 40% more loans than they should have gotten based on their population share here in the U.S. Asians got about 30% more than their share, so 28%. They were the only two groups that actually got more than their share of loans. In terms of those who got less than their share, American Indian and Alaska Native got about 45% of the loans that they should have gotten if we were looking to be equitable. Hispanics got about 35% of the loans that they should have got to be equitable. And again, the lowest group on the totem pole were African Americans, who got about 14% of the loans that they should have gotten, which, if I said that in a different way, Black firms should have got 86% more loans than they did. Hispanics should have gotten about 65% more loans than they did. American Indians should have got about 56% more loans than they did. And when you look at raw numbers, what that means is that white businesses got about 154,000 more loans than they were kind of in line for from an equity standpoint. Asians got about 11,000 more. Black firms got 76,000 less than they should have gotten. Hispanics got 78, almost 79,000 less loans than they should have gotten. And American Indians got about 5,000 less loans than they should have gotten. And so what we see here is, again, another example of how inequity gets played out in the public space from that standpoint. So anyway, I wanted to share that with you. So what does that bring us? What are the questions that we should be asking as it relates to COVID-19 impact on Black businesses, and particularly as a result from the response for Black businesses from the United States of America? So that brought me to two basic questions. So the first question is, I talked about it earlier, what will the African American entrepreneur and business landscape look like after COVID-19? Second question is, well, what can be done to support African American entrepreneurs and businesses to ensure that they survive and thrive past the COVID crisis? So I want to make sure I highlight those two names, or those two terms. Not only do we want Black businesses to survive, we want them to thrive following post COVID-19. The only way we can really come up with a real accurate way of identifying what needs to be done in order to make sure that happens. Is we have to understand where Black businesses were before COVID-19. And so I spent a few moments talking about that. So let's look at this idea of a racial business ecosystem. And, we know what an ecosystem is, right? It's kind of all these different species, all kind of the same environment. And so I look at ecosystems through the lens of businesses, and particularly through the lens of race. And so what I want to do is first, I want you to kind of direct your attention really to the left side of the screen, right? Where I have, again, these are the 5 major racial groups in the United States. And I wanted to create what I would call an easy way for you to understand, exactly, what the kind of economic landscape looked like from an entrepreneurship standpoint before COVID. Now, this is before COVID. So what I said, okay, well, let me break the United States down into 100, right? Imagine that the United States, which has, well over 330, 40 million people. Imagine we broke down the United States into 100 people, 100 companies, $100 worth of cash with those companies, and what I call entrepreneurial strength, entrepreneurial wealth strength, which is essentially, the ability of different groups to have access to capital markets and resources and things of that nature. So if we broke down the country into these hundreds, then basically based on the demographics, there would be 60 white people who would own amongst them about 83 companies out of the 100. And of those 83 companies out of the 100, they would have about $90 of the $100, and essentially about $92 of racial strength that relates to getting access to capital in open markets. Now, if I look at the Black community, that's a different story, right? So in the United States, there would be 13 Blacks who own between them about 2 companies. And those 2 companies made about $1 a year between them. And the economic strength was actually negative, almost negative $50 in strength, which means that we have a incredible low wealth in the Black community. And on top of that, you just are crippled by having liabilities that are much higher than assets and things of that nature. And so you can kind of go down and see the other populations, Hispanics and Asian Americans and American Indians. And what you notice is just like the last chart, that the only 2 groups that are above the fray are whites and Asians. In this case, at a national level, Hispanics, from the economic standpoint, through the entrepreneurship lens, are a bit worse off than the Black community. But again, nobody is doing great in this if you are a community of color. You turn your attention to the right side of the screen. What I did essentially, I mapped this onto a chart. Now, we see almost every day what's going on with the COVID curve, right? Where is it going? Is it getting higher? We're seeing kind of record numbers of daily cases now. Well, long before there was a COVID curve, I had this economic equity curve that I would graph. And I would use this when I talk to communities and say, okay, well, how equitable is your community? And so basically, if you take the data from the left side of the screen and actually map it onto a chart, it looks like what is at the right side of the screen. So the first thing you need to know is that flat line, that's equity. So if every population got exactly the amount of resources that it required based on their population share, the line would be flat. And that would be a good thing. That would mean that we have total equity, total equality. Just like on the COVID curve, if it's flat, that's a good thing. That means that the cases aren't rising. So in this situation, we see that it's not a straight curve. So if you look at the line that curves, what that is each racial group's kind of plotting on that line. If you're above the line, that means that you have a larger share of the economy than your population should have. If you're below the line, that means you have a lower share of the economy than your population should. And again, looking at that graph compared to the right side of the screen, you see the white community way at the top, the Black community is low. The American Indians are almost at equity, but not quite. They're slightly below. Asian Americans are a little bit above equity, and Hispanics are below equity. And so this is a relative index, which means that when one group rises, somebody else has to fall. And so we see that, whether this is a United States kind of visual, but whether I'm looking at the local level, the state level, The chart largely looks like this. Usually at the local level, Blacks and Hispanics, depending on where they are, may change positions, but overall, it doesn't change shape from that standpoint. So now I want to actually go back and I want to take the table one that I showed you in terms of who got PPP loans and kind of how many PPP loans they got. And I want to couple that actually with the last chart I just showed you, which were kind of America broken down into 100s. And so I hold this up and to actually make a point. So the point being this, well, first let me kind of point something out that probably obvious to a number of y'all. If you look at the number of companies that each population has, and you look at the number of PPP loans that each of them receive, you probably say, wait a minute, McCoy, you made this big deal about, inequities and then distribution and things of that nature, but actually these things line up well. So there were 83 companies that whites owned, and they got 83 loans. The two Black companies got 2 loans. The half of American Indian company got basically 0.6 loans. Asian Americans, there are 9 of those companies, they got 8 loans. Hispanics got 6 companies, they got 7 loans. And so you might say, wait a minute, you're making a whole lot about nothing because, hey, it matches up. But I argue that you're actually looking at the wrong comparison to the PPP loans. Look at the category right beside of the entrepreneurial wealth strength, which again is really indicative of where you get access to capital and how you get access to capital. The PPP loan program came out under the actual mission of saying that it was going to help those businesses most in need of survival, of keeping their doors open, of keeping people employed. And I would argue that in that case, this chart should look a lot different, a lot more differently. It should be that actually those firms, those communities, those groups who had the lowest entrepreneurial wealth experience should actually be the ones that got the most and the greatest number of PPP loans because they were the individuals and the groups who actually needed it the most. And so that's where I argue that essentially we saw the greatest level of inequity because if we're looking at who needs it the most, it certainly didn't go to folks who need it the most, which again is indicative of this idea that when Shake Shack and Chris got the money, the $10 million and $20 million respectively, and then the backlash from the public, they immediately gave the money back and essentially said, well, okay, we give it back. We don't need it. We thought it'd be nice to have, but we don't need it. Whereas, again, 41% of the Black businesses went under within the first couple of months of PPP. So they're the ones who really needed it the most. And so anyway, that's my argument as it relates to kind of where the PPP went wrong. So this question of how did we get here, and I won't spend a whole lot of time on this, even though I could because it's pretty fascinating. But I want on the left side of the chart, I want to give you a quick history of what the Black relationship to entrepreneurship has been. Since Blacks have essentially been in the United States. So for the first time in almost 50 years, the relationship with Blacks and the economy really were Blacks were the economy. Black entrepreneurship was built on the back of slaves, on the back of the Black community. And so for about 250 years of slavery, that's what we saw. And there were Black businesses, even in the South, that were owned by free Black folks during slavery. And they had wealth. But of course, the majority of the wealth was inside the Black body. And held by white community. Right after the slavery ended, what I call artisan entrepreneurship came about. And artisan entrepreneurship essentially is this idea that after slavery ended, slaves have been doing essentially all of the work in the South. So therefore, now that they were free, they should be able to charge for that labor, charge for that entrepreneurship. There were so many different things, everything from Black codes that basically took the place of slave codes. And other impediments like illiteracy and vagrancy laws that locked Black folks up that basically kept them from benefit from that in a great way. For the next 80 years, really what I call segregationist entrepreneurship. After Lincoln was killed and Reconstruction came about, particularly in the South, that's when Jim Crow came about. And so for the next 80 years, we had what is largely segregationist entrepreneurship. And interesting enough, based on what folks think about the period and the way the resources is circling back into the community, that time period is generally known as the golden years of Black entrepreneurship, that 80 years of segregation. We then moved into the civil rights era where, Dr. King and Rosa Parks and other leaders who essentially got, accommodations and things of that nature. So there was a lot of entrepreneurs who, as part of what's kind of called the civil rights, SILVER, the civil rights of the civil rights, came about and said, okay, we want businesses, we want access to contracts, we want things of that nature. And so for the next quarter century, we saw that, that kind of rise of those businesses that came about during that time period. And then, particularly as the Black buying power increased, what we saw is a situation where all of a sudden white firms started recognizing, wait a minute, the Black folks have quite a bit of money, so let's find a way to essentially make them our customers as well. And so the next 2 decades is what I call intermediary entrepreneurship, where a lot of firms like advertising agencies and publishing houses, folks who actually allow the white firms to advertise to Black consumers, they really rose up during that time period, and they were the kind of the kings of the hill, kings and queens of the hill. And then somewhere along the way, the white business establishment said, wait a minute, we can actually cut our costs by bringing in our own kind of talent, which a lot of times those individuals came from the Black firm. We can actually do this in-house and create urban divisions and urban markets, and we don't have to necessarily use an intermediary firm. And so anyway, that has led to what I call this kind of hustle entrepreneurship, from a standpoint of that now individuals have to really focus on this idea of, just kind of hustling to be an entrepreneur. Anyhow, that's kind of the stages of Black entrepreneurship in the United States. If you look on the right side of the screen, what you have is, something that I think is very telling. If you look at the last 4 decades of Black firm change percentages since about 1972 to about 2012, what you see is this. If you look at the blue bar that's going up, that's really the change of number of firms, right? So you see from 1972 to 77 to 82, 87, you see kind of a continued increase in the number of Black firms in the marketplace, on up to 1992. We saw a recession. And then in 1997, the percentage firms went down. Now, this could mean, these are all positive numbers, which means that the number of firms kept going up. It's just not by as big a percentage that it went up. But what we see is that there's a positive growth of Black firms in the United States over time. If you look at the orange bar, though, that's the revenue side. So the blue is the firm, the orange is the revenue side. And so what we know about the revenue side is that for really the first or the last part of the 20th century, revenue was growing exponentially, which means that every time a new firm is created, they're capturing more revenue from the marketplace. And look at the 21st century, from 2002, 2007, 2012. In that case, Black firm growth is outpacing Black revenue growth, which means that there's more firms having to fight over less dollars. And that gray bar, that third bar, shows that the average revenue per firm has been in negative for the whole 21st century, which means that if you start a business now as a Black person, you're essentially taking business from somebody else as opposed to the whole pie growing, which up until the end of the 20th century, the pie was growing for Black folks, except with the exception of 1982. So that gives you some context of why I call it this kind of hustle phase entrepreneurship. All right, so let's talk about, as I kind of start moving toward my closing, I just showed you kind of what was going on from the entrepreneurship standpoint of the stages and revenue and firm growth. So let's talk about some general trends in general. So one general trend is that Black firms are the only racial group that has seen a decline of firms with paid employees. Those firms create the most wealth. So let me repeat that. I told you earlier before that the majority of African American firms are sole proprietorships, which again is the majority of every firm, but there's just a disproportionate majority of those firms in the Black community. Well, firms that have paid employees are the firms that create the most wealth, that generate the most dollars. Well, Blacks are the only racial group that are seeing those firms decline. Me and Jim Johnson from the University of North Carolina Chapel Hill did a study several years ago. We published a paper that looked at that phenomenon. And some of that is largely because these Black firms, as they grow and they become successful, the only buyer of those firms end up being white firms. And so, it becomes important to know that because that has a direct impact on the wealth of the community. If I would have had more time, I could show you an industry breakdown of every major industry in the United States. And for the most part, whites control really all those industries. Even as white population is declining, they're still in control of 80 to 90% of all industries. Almost 9 out of 10 firms in those industries are owned by white entrepreneurs. Whereas with the Black community, blacks comprise anywhere from 0% to 3% of some industries. So some industries, blacks are basically non-existent. Others they may peak out at 3% or average about 1.5%. That's troubling again because if I showed you which industry they were, you would see that the industries where we are dormant are some of the ones that create the most wealth. The third bullet here is that I mentioned that blacks had already declined by April based on Rob Fairley's study by 41%. Well, there's another study done that said that Black firms basically said that they did not get access to PPP dollars, that another half of those firms would be closed by this month in November, which is pretty troubling because that would mean that 60-75% of Black firms that started out the year would be gone before Thanksgiving. We've seen Buy Black campaigns, Blackout Day Tuesday, Tuesday, July 7th. We've seen the $10 million in receipts, which is part of the Juneteenth. And those things are fantastic. I think there's a great opportunity for Black folks to get access to new customers, to show that, hey, we have wonderful products and services, and just get some attention. And, I think Oprah just released her favorite things, and they're all Black firms. I mean, those things are great, but they just won't be enough to really move the needle in a significant way. It's going to take a lot more than that. And then, federal animosity. At the time that I first put this presentation together, it was before the election. Of course, the election just happened and it just kind of concluded a couple of days ago. But there's the famous White House budget memo that President Trump had to go out to the budget office that basically said that all racial sensitivity training within the White House, within all departments of the federal government, even within contractors who contracted with the federal government, that those should be canceled. And if anybody was known to be doing racial sensitive training, even from a contractor, that their contracts should be canceled. And so normally going into an election like this, you would have, especially one that was set to be so close and it ended up living up to the hype, then you would have both parties and everybody kind of fighting over trying to get resources into the Black community. But a month before, the election, you had the White House basically saying, racism is false. America's not racist, so therefore get rid of all these contracts. And so those are some broader and present trends that are going on that impacts success. I actually want to leave this in. It can make the presentation go a little longer, but I think it's actually pretty important to get some context of the gap in terms of racial wealth. We often, one of my great kind of friends and colleagues, William Sandy Darity over at Duke University, Samuel DuBose Cook, social equity. He does great work on everything from reparations to wealth gaps and things of that nature. And he focuses a lot of his attention on kind of historically, what have we seen? And we hear a lot about the racial wealth gap with housing, things of that nature. So I spend my time thinking about the racial wealth gap through the lens of business and entrepreneurship. And so I wanted to kind of use this slide to just show you just how stark the contrast is between Black wealth and white wealth. And so first of all, let's start out with kind of what happened during the pandemic. So there's a whole lot of folks who are still suffering from the pandemic, and we're expecting, there's a whole lot of folks who are on the teetering of being bankrupt or being evicted from their homes and things of that nature. Well, during the pandemic, the 25 richest global billionaires actually increased their wealth by about $255 billion from March 2020 through May 2020. Just in those few months. I didn't say a year, I didn't say 2 years, I said within March to May, the richest billionaires in the world increased their wealth by $255 billion. And of course, part of that is because a lot of those billionaires have their wealth in technology stocks, and technology went up through the roof because of the fact that we have to do all these things virtually. Now, when you look at the richest Americans, when you look at August 2019 to August 2020, that group in and of itself, the 400 richest Americans saw their wealth go up by 240 billion, for a total of 3.2 trillion amongst the 400 richest individuals. Now, there's all kind of analysis that we can do in terms of how much wealth they control and all those kind of things. But I just want to kind of point it out that during the pandemic, the richest Americans, the richest global billionaires saw their wealth go up. There's only one Black individual on the 400. That's Investor Robert Smith, which we all know to be the individual who generously, canceled the debt at Morehouse College a year or so ago. And Robert Smith actually saw, according to Forbes, his wealth go down some in this last year. So if we then go over to the right side of the screen and say, look at the U.S. Black wealth, there's only out of 615 billionaires in the United States, only 7 of those are African Americans. And I'm gonna name them in a minute off my head, and you probably know all of them, right? But Blacks make up 13% of the population of the United States, yet only 1.1% of the billionaires. And collectively, of those, when you add all the money together, those 7 billionaires, they have a total of $16.1 billion amongst them, which if you compare that to what the 400 has, that's less than 0.2% of the wealth of the 400. And of those 7 billionaires, 5 of those are athletes and entertainers. So let me see if I can, off the top of my head, name them. So got Robert Smith, which is the billionaire, the gentleman who owns the worldwide technology company. He's number 2. You have Oprah Winfrey, Michael Jordan, Jay-Z, Kanye West, and Tyler Perry. That makes up our billionaire class. And so we see that there's still an overrepresentation of wealth in athletes and entertainment. And so I want to then kind of do a diagonal thing on the screen. So I want to go back to Jeff Bezos. I kind of saved him for last anyway. But Jeff Bezos, we all know who Jeff Bezos is. He's the richest man on the planet. He built Amazon from 1995, 96 to become this huge behemoth. So on August 26th of 2020, Jeff Bezos' wealth reached, he's the first individual to ever see his wealth go of $200 billion. So it went to $205 billion on August 26th, 2020. Identify that because we go to this collective Black wealth before COVID, I estimate there were a little over 3 million Black businesses in the United States. And those 3 million Black businesses probably had somewhere just shy of $200 billion in total revenue, probably closer to the $175 billion revenue. But however you want to frame it, if we had these great assumptions that Black wealth or Black business revenue had grown by 30% since it was recorded last, and they would be right at 195 billion. But the point I'm trying to make here is that Jeff Bezos, one individual's wealth, one white individual's wealth is equivalent to greater than over 3 million Black businesses' revenue. So if you add all the Black businesses in the United States together and took all the money they made in a given year, Jeff Bezos' wealth would eclipse that by himself. And now keep in mind, this is after Jeff Bezos went through his divorce. So Jeff Bezos had given away all in his settlement, had already disposed of 25% of his own, shareholders to his wife, Mackenzie Bezos, is now known by Mackenzie Scott. So the 25% shares of Amazon that Mackenzie Scott got made her the richest woman in the world at $64 billion. And so it just shows you that even after giving away a quarter of the stock, Jeff Bezos still was richer than over 3 million Black businesses in the United States. And then the last point I want to make is that Jeff Bezos in July 2020 had a one-day increase in his wealth of $13 billion, which is the largest one-day increase in history. Well, his $13 billion one-day increase in July 2020 is almost 90% of the $16 billion that all of the Black billionaires in the United States has collectively. One day compared to a career worth of work. And so I want to use this just to really show you how big the racial wealth gap is, particularly as it relates to business and entrepreneurship, which is why I think it's so important from that standpoint. So now let's.
And of course, we want to thank Dr. Henry McCoy for crystallizing that. And I think sometimes people don't look at what he just said. And I just want to recap just a little bit. $300 billion that Jeff Bezos has made. And that $300 billion is more than the collective Black businesses. Think about that for a moment. One man, not all of America, but one man with $300 billion has eclipsed all of the money made by Black businesses in this country. As he said, that is the wealth gap. That is the real wealth gap. One individual, not a group. And I want you to think about that today as you sit here on the Black Business Network. One of the things that we must do, we must begin to look at how we can do more in our communities to build our communities. And with that being said, I'll see you on the other side.
I am Black business. From the moment I wake until the time I sleep, I am Black business. I am Black business. Are you Black business? I am Black business. Do you support Black businesses? I support Black business because I am Black business. Black Business Expo, one of the largest business showcases in the history of Black America in North Carolina. Sign up today at www.blackbusinessexpousa.com or call 919-380-9090. I am Black business. I am Black business. From the moment I wake until the time I sleep, I am Black business. I am Black business. Are you Black business? I am Black business. Do you support Black businesses? I support Black business because I am Black business. Black Business Expo, one of the largest business showcases in the history of Black America in North Carolina. Sign up today at www.blackbusinessexpousa.com or call 919-380-9090. I am Black business. I am Black business. From the moment I wake until the time I sleep, I am Black business. I am Black business. Are you Black business? I am Black business. Do you support Black businesses? I support Black business because I am Black business. Black Business Expo, one of the largest business showcases in the history of Black America in North Carolina. Sign up today at www.blackbusinessexpousa.com or call 919-380-9090. I am Black business. I am Black business. From the moment I wake until the time I sleep, I am Black business. I am Black business. Are you Black business? I am Black business. Do you support Black businesses? I support Black business because I am Black business. One of the largest business showcases in the history of Black America in North Carolina. Sign up today at www.blackbusinessexpousa.com or call 919-380-9090. I am Black business. I am Black business. From the moment I wake until the time I sleep, I am Black business. I am Black business. Are you Black business? I am Black business. Do you support Black businesses? I support Black business because I am Black business. Black Business Expo, one of the largest business showcases in the history of Black America in North Carolina. Sign up today.
The Black Business Expo is changing my life. This year, they are giving away laptops and even $5,000 in cash to students just like me. I'm Alexis, and I want to go to college to fulfill my dream of becoming an entrepreneur. Help the Black Business Expo going to www.blackbusinessexpousa.com and also becoming a vendor, a sponsor, or donating.
And we're back. And when I said earlier, and I want people to begin to think about what I said, $300 billion, one man. And that's more than the Black businesses in this country. Think about that for a moment. Think about that for a moment. You know, the Black Business Network is here to allow people to talk about that, you know. And when you begin to talk about that, you got to bring up a lady by the name of Tanetta Renee Hightower, the key to wealth. You know, she's the wealth professional. And when you talk about a professor, you got to call in the lady who makes it happen. You know, she's seeking to bring 15 plus years of experience in mixed with technical training and customer background to organization. She's highly adept in writing and presenting training materials, uncovering opportunities to improve programs and outcomes. And one of the things that I want to say about the lady, she's been on all week. She's been commenting, and we have truly enjoyed all of her input. Ladies and gentlemen, here she is, the wealth professor. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you, Dr. Kelly?
Yeah, Ms. Hightower, you know, you've been commenting all week. What did you think about this week so far?
You know what? It has been very enlightening. There's some things that I've learned, but I commend you and your staff for putting it together because this is necessary. We need to understand how to close that wealth gap that you were just speaking of. And it's essential, especially as we move forward and trying to teach the next generation, that we understand where we are and how to get to the next level as far as our finances, our how to take our Black businesses to that next level. It's, you know, astonishing, those statistics that were brought up in the last presentation. One man has more wealth than all of the, Black people in all the Black businesses. That's, you know, just it just blows my mind.
It's crazy. And you know, when I say it's $1 trillion out there, and we don't control it, we're targeted, and we're not Black led. And what I mean by that is a lot of these organizations who support Black businesses and talk about Black entrepreneurship, they're not Black led. They're pockets of money that's given to Black organizations or Black groups, and we as Black people stand up like we're doing something for the Black community, but we're not Black led. And we have to become Black led, because if one man, just think about this now, we're only 13%. I think we're 15%, but we're only, and they say 12%. I don't believe that number because there's too many of us are showing up in spaces. But if you think about this for a moment, if one man has more money, and you think about this, he created one business, and this is after his divorce. This is after she took her part. And here we are in 2021, and we have not even caught one man. That's really astonishing.
Exactly.
Well, yeah. I'm not gonna hold you, and I'm not gonna keep going on, because I could keep going on. Not gonna hold you. I know you're here. You have a great presentation. We're glad that you're here. We want to thank you, and of course, I'll see you on the other side.
Thank you, Dr. Kelly. As he said, I am Tanita Hightower, and I'm known as the Wealth Professor. That was, a name given to me just because I have this passion about making sure that we can get the wealth. And one of the things, as part of my business, one of the aspects that I emphasize to all of my clients and to all of my coaching and mentees is that this wealth that we're looking for is our birthright. And I can show you, or my mission is to help you obtain your birthright through applying the biblical principles that I'll be sharing, that are common or that are written in the scriptures and written in our Bibles, so that we can attain that wealth and close that gap that we were previously speaking of. I am also the national director of, let me see. I am sharing. I am also the national director of the Young Black Mastermind. And with that opportunity, I have the, again, an avenue to share this knowledge with young people, to help shape their minds and help them understand the importance of entrepreneurship and teach them ways to create wealth. You see, what I've noticed is that in our school systems, and in the way we teach our children, is that we train the creativity out of them. We teach them how to repeat, to recite, and to fill in the bubbles and conform to some standardized testing. Hang on that. All right, there we go. I think there it is. And what is important is that we want to be able to make sure that our children have that opportunity to expand and be creative. If I was to give 100 adults a task to draw a picture of a house, 99% of the time, all of the adults who have been trained, went through the school system, will draw a square with a triangle on the top for the roof. It will all have the sidewalk and maybe a stick figure of a mom and dad and 2 kids and a dog. But if I would give that same assignment to children, you might see 100 different types of houses. They might be circle, they might be triangle, the house might be in the sky. So what I've noticed is that creativity, which is necessary to become an effective business owner and an entrepreneur, is that part of them is taken away or suppressed through having to fill in the standardized answers. So my role or my opportunity is through teaching through the Wealth Professor organization, Wisdom Wealth Group, is working closely with the National Young Black Masterminds to make sure that we are understanding that opportunity that we have and making sure that we're not losing that creativity that is essential. And which leads me to why I'm here to talk about the key to wealth. And I say I'm going to come from a biblical perspective, because I believe that is one of the keys that we're missing. We're trying to conform to that standardization of how to be successful, of how to acquire wealth. We have this misnomer that we have to go to school, get a degree, find a great job, work 40 hours for 40 years, and retire. But in essence, that is not setting us up to create wealth. We're actually limiting ourselves because we are limited to the amount of money that our employer is paying us. We're limiting ourselves to where we can live. We're limiting ourselves to the avenues that we can do based upon the salary that we're given, based upon the job structure. And we are, again, suppressing that creativity, which leads to that abundance, that wealth creation. Now, if we look at in the scriptures, we can pull out the biblical practical principles that are necessary, that are essential to pull out the wealth that we want. We always talk about, yes, well, we want to close that gap. We go and get those types of degrees. But in essence, we, again, like I said, are limiting ourselves to what someone else says that we are able to have and accomplish. So my lesson this morning, again, is we're going to be looking at some keys to wealth. And one of the first things I wanted to explain